All right, here we go. Divinity Original Sin 2. Guide to the skills. We are at the last skill, which is Polymorph. Another neutral skill because it doesn't scale with any of the abilities, at least most of them. There is one exception, Tentacle Lash, which scales with strength. But to be honest, if you go into Polymorph, you're not going there for Tentacle Lash. That is goodie, the icing on the cake. If you go into Polymorph, you want either massive mobility or massive crowd control or both. So Polymorph probably is a school that can be combined with almost any build in some shape or form. Polymorph's passive ability is to give you, for every point in Polymorph, an additional attribute point, which is strong. Don't discount that, specifically in the beginning. It is strong, because your main damage ability, for instance, strength, finesse, or intelligence, will dictate the damage that you are dealing. So if you have a higher value there, it will mean that you have a higher damage output. The matter of fact, the ability damage is also multiplicatory, similar to the warfare bonus. Both of them are multiplicatory, which just really means you should stack it at the beginning. Polymorph, in my perspective, is the perfect school to combine with any physical build that you're running. If you're running a two-handed build, which is super strong, if you run a tank, one-handed build, which is okayish, if you run an archer, which is also super strong, or if you run a scoundrel, Polymorph is the way to go. You should know that you should only put 2 points into Polymorph at the beginning, and first of all go with your main damaging school. For instance, if you go with an archer, you start with 2 points in archery, then put a little bit into warfare, and then like put 1 to 2 points into Polymorph. But first and foremost, maximize warfare. Once you have maximized that, definitely, if you haven't done at that point, definitely put your 2 points into Polymorph, because it is that good. Specifically for melee characters, I can highly recommend it, because it just makes the game so much easier. And let's look at a couple of the abilities that you would gain. Not only do you always get the attribute points, which are just incredibly good, you also get a handful of really, really strong abilities. I will start with the strongest one, and contrary to most of the abilities, the strongest one is actually something which is coming a little bit later in the game, which is coming with Polymorph 3. But I want to highlight it because, in my opinion, it's probably tied to, if not the single strongest ability in the whole game. Skin Graft costs you 1 source point and 2 action points. But not only does it remove a couple of negative effects, that's not the main part, it resets all of the cooldowns. And for those of you who are incredibly frustrated with the cooldowns on the casters, you can probably imagine how strong a reset of all of the cooldowns is. If you unload and then begin to reset all of the cooldowns in the next round, this definitely has its abilities. I'm not even going to go into the abuses that you can do together with apotheosis and a lot of the later game source skills. We're not going to go down that route. Let me just state, this ability has, and you will see it if you're playing later into the end game. This ability in the course of the later stages of the campaign is just extremely powerful. Now, beginning at the start, though, you do not have Skin Graft. It will happen in Act 2, where you will get to Skin Graft. At the beginning, you still have very strong abilities. They are just strong and not ridiculously overpowered like Skin Graft, so it's kind of still a good deal. But I wanted to put Skin Graft onto its own league because it's just so good. My personal favorites are Spread Your Wings, probably one of the strongest movements abilities. For 3 rounds, it will give you wings. And what that means is for one action point, you get the wings, and then 3 rounds in a row, you can use another action point to travel immense distances and avoid attacks of opportunity. That shouldn't only sound good, that should sound great. It means that for many of the Scundrel rogues or for two-hand fighters, you're repositioning, respectively evading or getting out of combat. Super strong ability. Only maybe second only to Chameleon Cloak, which is an invisibility for 2 turns. The AI in Divinity Original Sin 2 is really bad in dealing with any form of invisibility, so they will not notice when you get invisible. They will also not use AoE attacks in order to get you out of there. Basically, you can unload as a rogue and just use invisibility at the with your last action point, and then just stand there, wait for the 1 turn where adrenaline is running off, so where you are anyways reduced with your action points, and then rinse and repeat. It's a relatively high cooldown, but it is the core mechanic of many of the solo builds to effectively go invisible to someone and then ambush and strike the creature. These two are great. I don't want them to overshadow basically the Chicken Claw, which is a physical crowd control. So once the character has depleted the enemy's armor, it will turn the enemy into a chicken for 2 turns. Not only is that one of the few CCs that actually lasts for 2 turns, which is phenomenal, not only is that something that works wonderfully well with melee characters anyways, it is also targeting exactly the same damage type that you are dealing, so you're depleting the enemy's physical armor and then you're chickening them. Wonderful, really, really strong. The second really strong ability is Medusa Head, which is kind of chicken but on steroids. You're growing Medusa Head with a petrifying aura or petrifying visage skill for 2 turns. So if you want to chain CC someone, just go with Chicken Claw and Medusa Head. I'm running both of these skills regularly. They are so good. I can highly recommend that. Another skill that is good, and you see that basically every skill here is almost good or great, is terrain transmutation. If you do have elemental affinity, you can basically swap 2 terrains, put yourself in water and the enemy into fire, or vice versa. So that would help your elemental affinity. Is something for one that is definitely worth the cost for only 1 point. And last but not least, I personally like the Oily Blob, just because it's yet another summoning, and if you don't have any other summoning, that one is actually also quite good. So these would be my recommendations. Of course, Tentacle Lash is not bad, Bullhorn is also not bad, Heart of Steel is not bad. Matter of fact, there isn't any really bad skill in that school, and that's probably what makes Polymorph so attractive. It's just a really nice school that you want to splash into your build. So now that we've gone through all of the builds, you probably all of the schools, you probably will ask yourself, what's the strongest build, or how should I create the characters in order to really build them to the maximum. And we're going to go through that in the next video.